You gotta believe.
And he struck out this side.
Unity is adversity.
Perfect jump, and he made a perfect catch.
Refuse to lose.
Strike three swinging.
United we play. United we win.
Deep right field. Another absolute bomb over the flat court.
We are family.
Outstanding effort again.
We're busting ours to kick yours.
That's big time.
-15.
Respect all, fear none.
Oh, did he belt that one?
Intensity is not a perfume.
It was a no-doubter.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
We are up in the bird's nest here at Oriole Park at Camden Yards. Things look a little bit differently this week as Brendan Mortensen, my co-host, is in Phoenix, Arizona covering this series against the Diamondbacks. So he will not be with us here right now live at 11 a.m., but I got the chance to chat with him this morning as he's been covering down there at Chase Field this whole series and leading up to Game 3, an exciting rubber match. But we've got a lot of injury updates to talk about and pitching staff injuries and Gunnar Henderson as well being back. So I will send you all on over right now to my chat with Brendan Mortensen earlier this morning. Brendan, thanks so much for getting up on the earlier side in Arizona to chat with me, especially on our podcast day. But so far, how are things over there in Phoenix?
Well, I'm tired. I'm not going to deny any of the sleepy allegations. The time zone here doesn't make sense, by the way. It is mountain time, but it is still on Pacific time because Arizona does not observe daylight savings. So it doesn't make any sense. None of the game start times make any sense. This weird time zone that I am currently in that is one time zone, but actually another time zone doesn't make any sense. But I'm still happy to be podcasting, even in the wee hours of the morning.
Yeah, and even if it's roughly at 11 a.m. for us every day, then we're still getting a podcast out. But of course, another podcast means maybe some more injury news, and unfortunately, there's another big blow in Zach Eflin, who was just had his MRI results come back yesterday after he left his six-inning pitch count on Monday, that was. So now it's found out, and Brandon Hyde told the media and told you yesterday that there's a low-grade strain in his lat. What does this mean? How long is he out for?
Yeah, well, it's not good. I mean, there's no way around the conversation around Orioles pitching injuries. At this point, it's just one blow after another. You have Zach Eflin and Grayson Rodriguez, who are supposed to be at the top of the rotation. Those two guys are both out, and the Orioles did a lot of the right things this offseason, bringing in Charlie Morton, Tomoyuki Sugano, trying to add some depth to the starting rotation. And now the top-end guys are hurt in Eflin and Rodriguez, and the depth guys are hurt. The guys that you thought would be able to fill in this starting five and give you some innings are down too. Trevor Rogers, Chase McDermott, Albert Suárez are all injured right now. And you combine that with Kyle Bradish and Tyler Wells, by my count, that's 7 possible starting options that the Orioles don't have available to them at this point. And that's just hard for any team in baseball to sustain. And it's unbelievable that this is now striking the Orioles 2 years in a row after the injury luck that they had a season ago. But yeah, I mean, Zach Eflin was outstanding on Monday. Goes 73 pitches through 6 innings. And when he comes out of that game, it's a head scratcher for everybody. And Brandon Hyde later said that the way he was throwing the ball, he could have gone 8-9 innings in that game. That could have been a complete game for Zach Eflin, the way he was tossing it. And we couldn't find a reason up in the press box as to why Eflin came out of that game. Brandon Hyde noted that there was a little bit of a dip in velocity, but there really wasn't a noticeable one. Maybe there's something that they could see from the dugout, but at least from, following along with pitch velocities on StatCast, there wasn't a pitch velocity drop that was noticeable and you could point to and say, okay, maybe this is the reason why he's out of the game. But he comes out and tells the coaches about some tightness in his shoulder, is how he described it Monday night. He felt really optimistic yesterday morning. Brandon Hyde tells us that Eflin woke up and was feeling a lot better. There wasn't as much soreness in his shoulder, and Then, of course, the MRI results come back and it's a low-grade lat strain. So hopefully this is just the minimum amount of time for Eflin on the injured list, and he is back to throwing. And it's a similar thing to what we saw last year, where Eflin is on the injured list for pretty much the minimum amount of time, just misses a few starts. It's not a huge deal. But for the Orioles at this point, it really can't be a bigger injury than that, because he has been the ace of the rotation. He goes 6 innings in each of his first 3 starts. It's a quality start every single time. And for as much discussion as there was this offseason about the fact that the Orioles didn't bring in ace, I mean, Zach Eflin has been that. So really, the only hope at this point is that it's not a more serious injury than the hopeful short time on the injured list that Zach Eflin will spend.
Right, and you mentioned this 3 consecutive outings to start 2025 with 6 innings in each of those. So the consistency is definitely going to be missed, whether that is only a week of him on the injured list or whatnot. But another big blow was that maybe your next best option would have been bringing Albert Suárez out from the bullpen and up to the starting rotation if you needed to, just given what he did all of last season in this starting rotation. But he is also on the injured list, the 60-day IL, with a subscapularis muscle strain, which was the largest strongest muscle in your rotator cuff. And this is also a big blow to pitching staff.
Yeah, it certainly is, because Albert Suárez last year, I mean, he's kind of made of rubber, right? You have the start where Grayson Rodriguez isn't able to go, and then all of a sudden Albert Suárez just out of the bullpen turns into Superman and gives you more innings than anybody expected, and that was his role all of last year. And I know there were some question marks late in spring training and then to start the season in Toronto about what Suárez would be able to give you this season, but then I'm not going to say it's a comfort to know that there was an injury happening during those outings, but it's a bit of an explanation, right, as to why Albert Suárez wasn't putting up the numbers that we expected to begin this season. But there was obviously something wrong at the end of spring training, and in Toronto, Brandon Hyde said as much, but Suárez just didn't really say anything about it, and it was hard for the Orioles to tell exactly what was going on. But yeah, I mean, Suárez was probably the next guy to be in this rotation. He was in the bullpen, but he was in that long man role. So now, as I mentioned, you lose Trevor Rogers, you lose Chase McDermott. They're both down with injury right now. I think Brandon Young is probably the most logical option to come up and make a few starts here for the Orioles. He's already on the 40-man roster. He's been off to a fantastic start with Norfolk, 2 starts, 11 1/3. 11 strikeouts, only 2 walks, hasn't allowed a run. So I would imagine that Brandon Young will probably get an opportunity here. But, like I mentioned, there were so many guys that you had as potential options to fill in this rotation at some point, and they're just all down. I mean, Brandon Young, was in that conversation as well, but he was further down the list than guys like Rogers and McDermott and Suárez. And it's just kind of unbelievable that none of those guys are available at this point.
Yeah, you are really hoping for all of this pitching depth to come, at least a few of them at a time, back, and hopefully Zach Eflin is not on the injured list for much longer. But in terms of also replacing Suárez, who was leaving that bullpen role open, and one of the guys that probably wouldn't have come up and made this opening day roster is Brian Baker if Suárez had been healthy and Andrew Kittredge had been healthy from the beginning. But Baker has had a really, really good start to 2025 so far. I mean, he along with Gregory Soto, Sir Anthony Dominguez, Yennier Cano up until yesterday, all of them combined an ERA of 0. So Brian Baker has been doing very, very well this season so far.
Yeah, I mean, the bullpen's been outstanding. You have 2 guys in, Brian Baker and Matt Bowman as well that probably aren't on this opening day roster if everybody is healthy. You mentioned Kittredge and, of course, Suárez going down and Matt Bowman coming up. But Brian Baker, I mean, 6 innings, 7 Ks, no walks, 3 hits, no earned runs. He has been an absolute dude. The fastball has been playing up. The improved changeup has been a really, really big thing for him. And Matt Bowman as well has given you a lot of length out of the bullpen. He's not going the same 2, 3, 4 innings at a time that maybe you were hoping Albert Suárez could do. But Bowman and Baker, with how often they've been able to pitch, have been able to kind of give you some length in the aggregate. And I think the bullpen for as many question marks as there have been about the health of the starting rotation, the quality of the starts that you've been getting, and kind of the inconsistency of the offense so far to start the year, the bullpen has just been rock solid. I know there, have been some rocky outings here and there. Cionel Perez hasn't gotten off to a fantastic start to the season, but as you mentioned, Danny, I mean, this entire bullpen really as a unit, taking out some of those, few and far between rocky outings, the entire bullpen's been really, really good. I mean, Keegan Aiken has been solid. Seranthony Dominguez and Gregory Soto, like you mentioned, have been outstanding. Matt Bowman, Yennier Cano, I mean, all of those guys have looked good. Even Felix Bautista, who is still working his way back and is trying to get back to Felix Bautista form, he gave the most Felix Bautista performance we've seen from him on Monday, where, it wasn't a super high strikeout number, but it was 2 groundouts and a pop out and really no threats on the base pass. There was no traffic whatsoever. It was a 1-2-3. So I think for as many questions as you have had elsewhere and as many questions that could have been presented, losing guys like Kittredge and Suárez, there really haven't been any in the bullpen because guys have just stepped up.
Yeah, and the bullpen, you would argue, has been definitely the MVP unit for the Orioles so far in 2025, especially when you look at the starting pitchers and the rotation who haven't really, aside from Eflin, haven't really been able to go that deep into the innings, so that the bullpen is getting a lot of work day in, day out.
Yeah, that's been the tricky part with the rotation so far. I mean, we saw a nice second start to the season from Tomoyuki Sugano, but as you mentioned, you were expecting guys like Charlie Morton to give you some more length. And it's been such a weird start to the season for Charlie Morton, where he's allowed 13 earned runs in 3 games. But when you look at the physical characteristics of Morton's pitches, all of it tracks with what we have seen from him over the past few seasons when he has been consistently good. Again, the numbers aren't going to be flashy, but you were expecting him to give you, 6 innings, an ERA close to 4, but right now that ERA is close to 9, and it just seems like every single mistake he's making is getting absolutely hammered. The stuff looked good against Boston 2 starts ago. I think it was 6 days ago at this point, Morton strikes out 10 in only 5 innings of work against Boston, but he really makes 2 mistakes in that game to Alex Bregman and Christian Campbell, and they both get hit for 2-run homers, and all of a sudden you're looking at 5 innings, 5 earned. Yesterday in Arizona, it's not his best start. I mean, his command is a bit all over the place, especially in the first inning. He ends that game with 5 walks, but as he mentioned after the game, he makes a few different pitches here or there, and it's a completely different ballgame because he still gets through 5 innings and only allows 4 earned runs, but it's really just 2 bad mistakes to Pavin Smith, who hits a ground rule double, and then to Josh Naylor, who hits a double down the line, and all of a sudden it's 4 earned runs instead of 2. So there are really a few pitches for Morton over the past few starts that could have made the difference between him going 5 innings and 6 and maybe into the 7th inning, because the pitch count hasn't been astonishingly high for him. I mean, it was 98 pitches to get through 5 in Boston, 87 pitches to get through 5 yesterday, but you really needed some more length out of him. Hopefully for Dean Kramer today, he can give the bullpen a little more length, because you had to use 3 guys yesterday. You had to use 3 guys on Monday with Eflin's injury. So the bullpen is going to be taxed if this starting rotation doesn't start working into the 6th, 7th inning with a little bit more consistency.
In terms of some, maybe on the positive side, pitching staff news, I mean, we learned on Monday that Grayson Rodriguez was scheduled to throw a full bullpen session, and Drew French said that it was going to be fastballs and changeups, and he's moving in the right direction. That's what Drew French, O's pitching coach, said. And then also in terms of some better updates as well, Kyle Bradish was throwing on flat ground, Drew French also said that Kyle's doing awesome. He's touching 90s in his pull-down phase on flat ground, so he's right where he needs to be. And then also on the other side with Kyle Gibson, he is also throwing his first start in AAA Norfolk tomorrow. So there are some lighter, better news in the pitching staff, and you're just hoping that they can all come back very, very soon.
Yeah, you need some, right? I mean, with all the pitching injuries up to this point, you needed some decent news. Grayson Rodriguez, I think, is probably the most encouraging of that bunch, just because of the impact that he could have once he returns. Kyle Bradish is a high impact guy as well, but it's going to be a while before we see him up in the big leagues again. That's still probably a matter of months. Grayson Rodriguez, though, you're hoping could be a matter of weeks. I mean, if he is getting up to 90s, throwing different pitches, not just a fastball, if he's working in the off speed as well, that's a really, really good sign. I would, Grayson Rodriguez is going to require rehab starts. I don't know how many rehab starts that's going to be, but he essentially needs to go through a spring training, much like Kyle Gibson did. But, I'd say Grayson Rodriguez could have the biggest impact. If Kyle Gibson can get up here sooner rather than later, that's going to be a big impact too. I mean, as you mentioned, throwing his first rehab start, he's not going to be ramped up in time to be a Zach Eflin replacement possibility, because you need a guy like that in a week or a week and a half, depending on how the Orioles play the rotation. They've got a couple of off days coming up, but yeah, I mean, you need some of those guys to come back. So it's good that there's at least some encouraging news in the midst of what has seemed like kind of a barrage of bad news over the last few weeks on the injury front.
Yeah, it's certainly been, the injury bug has been already swarming Baltimore early in 2025, which is not the start that you wanted to see. In terms of some infielders and position players that have come back, Gunnar Henderson being one of them, he went 0 for 4 last night, so nothing to note offensively from him there. But on Monday, he had his first multi-hit game of the season after coming back with his kind of muscle strain and intercostal torso oblique, whatever you want to call it. So he was back on Monday, not so much last night, but it's just encouraging to see that he's getting there back to full health.
Yeah, I mean, Gunnar Henderson is the catalyst in this lineup. We have heard a lot of Orioles say it, that, he is the table setter. He's going to be the leadoff hitter, and with the energy that he plays with and the production that he's able to give you, he is the guy that is going to help the Orioles lineup find some consistency here, because at the start of the season, it kind of feels like they either scored 8 runs or 2 runs. And I think Gunnar Henderson is the type of player, we saw it on Monday, where it doesn't have to be your best performance at the plate, but if you can put up 5 runs, you can win a lot of baseball games. And that's what they did on Monday against a really good starter in Zach Eflin. And it was a good night from Gunnar Henderson, where he's got 2 hits and he's setting the table. And, I know the numbers haven't been great for Gunnar to start the year. I'm still encouraged with what I've seen from him. He's still finding his rhythm a little bit. He didn't have, the same sort of spring training that a lot of other guys had. It wasn't a lot of rehab outings in AAA Norfolk. So he's still, no pun intended, getting into the swing of things a little bit. But the underlying numbers for Gunnar are still encouraging. I mean, the expected stats aren't great, but the average exit velocity is at 98 miles an hour. His hard hit rate is at 67%. Like, those balls are going to start to fall. If you are consistently hitting the ball that hard, the hits are going to come. So Gunnar Henderson, it is obviously a huge deal to get him back. And if he can get going, I think this Orioles lineup can get going with some more consistency.
Yeah, and I know that a lot of last season, too, was like, the Orioles are very home run heavy and home run reliant, but this year it hasn't necessarily been that way. I mean, when you look at the win against the Red Sox, an 8-5 win in the last series, in 2 series ago, rather, they won with no home runs and scoring 8 runs. And then last night, 3 runs, none of them were home runs. So a lot of it is with these guys just getting on base and getting in scoring position. And yes, you are looking for the offense to be a lot more consistent than they have been in the last 15 games. But still, it's a great sign that the Orioles offense, especially now when it's colder and home runs will come in a lot more when it's warmer. It's good to note that they are getting on base and still scoring without home runs.
Yeah, only 1 home run on Monday. So you had a Ryan O'Hearn solo homer. But other than that, it was just the offense kind of churning. And they were really close to that last night, too. I mean, Jackson Holliday comes up in the top of the 7th and, has a solid fly ball at the left field. Lourdes Gurriel Jr. just makes a really nice sliding catch. And, of course, there's the nonsense with Tyler O'Neill getting caught between second and third base. He's tagged out because no umpire made a signal that there was an out on the field. So if Gurriel doesn't make a sliding catch and 2 runs score on that Jackson Holliday single to left field with the bases loaded, we're talking about maybe an Orioles win where they don't hit any home runs and they just come up clutch in big moments. And they are capable of doing that. I mean, they were literally a fantastic play from Gurriel defensively away from potentially winning that ball game, because the bullpen was shut down once again. and they could have taken the lead if they score 2 runs there. So I'm still encouraged with what I've seen from the offense in Arizona with Gunnar Henderson at the top of the lineup. As I mentioned, he, even on a bad night last night, they are still able to get things going. So, that they were right there last night. And you're right, they haven't been as home run dependent as they were in 2024. And I think that's a good sign about this lineup potentially turning things around.
Yeah, and there's been some other guys like Adley Rutschman who did really well last night. He went 1 for 3 with a walk and a run, and then Cedric Mullins has definitely been heating up, or hot for that matter, over the last few series. So a lot of encouraging sides on the offense. Definitely still need to be a little bit more consistent. Gunnar Henderson, will look to see a lot more from him. But in terms of the bad news with the pitching injuries and Zach Eflin, you're really crossing your fingers and knocking on wood that he is not on the injured list for too much longer. And Albert Suárez, even though it's on the 60-day IL, you're hoping that is just it. And Grayson Rodriguez, of course, comes back soon. But Brendan, thanks so much for taking the time this morning early in Phoenix, Arizona. What is your one next takeaway for this upcoming game today?
Yeah, I think it's a big rubber match. Dean Kramer has thrown the ball well in his first 2 starts, and the results haven't really been there. And I think Dean is the guy that I'm looking at in this rotation now, with just 3 healthy guys from the 5 that you had at the beginning of the season in, Dean Kramer, Charlie Morton, Tomoyuki Sugiyama, that we penciled in the offseason as in this starting rotation. I think Dean has the capability to step up and be a major part of this rotation. So I'm looking for Dean to have a solid outing today. I think that's going to be an X factor for the Orioles moving forward here over the next few weeks as they try to, and honestly, tread water in the starting rotation with no Zach Eflin and no Grayson Rodriguez. It's a really tough spot for them to be in, and I think holding the starting rotation to the same expectation that you had when Eflin and Rodriguez were healthy is just an unrealistic one. So if they can just deliver, 5-6 innings and 2-3 runs, you don't need the ace type of stuff out of these guys. But if Dean Kramer can firmly keep you in this ball game and give you a little bit of length, hopefully pitching into the 6th inning and keep you in the game, I think that is going to be a big thing to look for. And, on the offensive side, it's a different discussion because the talent is there. And Tyler O'Neill said it last night. There's really nothing in particular that the lineup needs to do. They just need to get hot. So any game that can start to build that momentum will just be a huge thing for Baltimore moving forward.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Dean Kramer's start goes today. He has 7 strikeouts, a very different pitcher in that sense from Zach Eflin, where you're not necessarily going to have a huge number of strikeouts. But looking for the best for Dean Kramer, and I wish you well again for Phoenix and the rest of your road trip here. Lastly, since you have entered the status of MASN Insider, let the fans know where they can find you.
Yeah, if you've been following along with this Arizona series, you've probably seen my writing on MASNsports.com, or you can follow me on Twitter at Brendan Morty. I will have your game updates today for the final game in Arizona, and then I'll be making some more road trips throughout the year as well. So follow along.
Thanks, Brendan. Hopefully it's not too hot in Arizona. I saw it's supposed to be 95 degrees later today. So
yeah, high of about 100. So hopefully I don't pass out on the walkover, and I actually will have updates for the game today.
Right. Well, it's freezing here in Baltimore, so I'm jealous. But thanks so much again, Brendan, for waking up early for us.
Yeah, thanks, Annie. Happy to.
Right, see ya. Well, a lot of exciting things coming up for this rubber match against the Diamondbacks. The O's still on track and hoping to find their first series win of 2025. But that'll wrap things up here from the Bird's Nest in this week's edition. Thanks so much for those who tuned in live on Facebook and YouTube. And if you didn't, you can catch us elsewhere on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, anywhere you get your podcasts. But again, thank you so much for listening, and a huge thanks to our producer, Amy Jennings, behind the scenes, and Brendan Mortensen for covering it over in Arizona. So for Brendan Mortensen and myself, Annie Claff, thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you next time.